ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
One of Australia's longest-running cold cases started in a terrace house in Melbourne's inner north. Almost 50 years ago, housemates Suzanne Armstrong and Susan Bartlett were stabbed to death in their home. The case went unsolved for decades, but last year a man was arrested and charged. In the case of the Easy Street murders, we'll be in court as the evidence against Perry Korumboulos is tested and the decision is made about whether he'll be tried for these murders. Search for the Case Solved podcast on the ABC Listen app or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Sam here. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to let you know we're doing a listener survey and we would love to hear from you about how you found the show this year. You can find the link in our show notes or on our website. Just search ABC News Daily. For months, there's been great hope of a November interest rate cut to coincide with the Melbourne Cup. But now, with inflation rising again, all bets are off. But what have the 3 rate cuts already granted this year done to house prices? Today, finance expert Alan Kohler on why the only way is up and probably always will be. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Alan, it's a pretty big day. We've got the Melbourne Cup, of course. I'm not sure if you're going to have a bet or not on that. But anyway, perhaps more exciting for a lot of people is that it's rates day again.
That's right. And the odds-on favourite for interest rates is nothing. Zero. Right. No change. The market had been 40 to 50% odds on a rate cut today, but that went to zero last week when the quarterly inflation rate came out, which was higher than expected at 3.2% for headline inflation and 3% for core inflation, which is what the Reserve Bank keeps an eye on.
Hopes of a Melbourne Cup win for borrowers have faded. September consumer prices chalked up the fastest quarterly rise in more than 2 years. And
that has made everyone think, well, that's it for rate cuts for the time being.
Pretty frustrating for home borrowers.
Well, look, it's true that those who have a house and a mortgage, it's bad, but, you know, for those of us who would like to see housing in general become more affordable, it's good that there's no rate cut. I think rate cuts, we had 3 rate cuts this year and it's driven house prices up another 6%. So, you know,
oh my gosh,
that's bad.
Yeah, okay, well, let's consider that then. We don't know if there will be any more rate cuts, but we do know what's been going on, as you say, with house prices. There are still so many people desperate to get into the market, of course, but the prices, as you say, they just keep going up. So what are we seeing, Alan?
Well, look, prices are going up this year clearly because of the 3 rate cuts. And there are 2 sources of house prices going up or down, for that matter. And there's the question of underlying demand and supply, and then there's the question of what people can afford to pay. And that what people can afford to pay obviously has to do with the interest rate they would pay on their mortgage and also how much of a deposit they need. And so these are 2 different things. The underlying demand and supply, that is to say the number of people looking for a house and the number of houses on the market. But then when you look at the amount that people can pay, obviously 3 rate cuts means that people can pay more, and they tend to offer more at the auction if that's what they can do. And the other limiting factor, obviously, is what sort of deposit can you come up with. Now, what the federal government has done has changed the deposit system completely. You know, you can buy a house on a 5% deposit now, and in a way, what that does is basically spread the ability to buy a house away from those who have access to the bank of mum and dad. I mean, at the moment, really, the situation particularly in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane and increasingly Adelaide and Perth, is that you can only buy a house if your parents help you.
Yeah.
And the government's 5% deposit scheme basically means that, you know, people who haven't got parents who can help them can also probably get a house.
My hairdresser, bless her, she has been looking in Sydney, Alan, over the past 6 months, and she has noticed in those 6 months how much further out of reach it is for her to buy a property. So when we talk about increases in house prices, it happens over a short period of time, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and it has been lately because of these interest rate cuts. And also the 5% deposit scheme will also tend to put house prices up some more.
Well, Alan, why don't we discuss now a bit more that issue of supply and demand? Now, to do that, it'd be good if we just went back to, I don't know, the golden age, the 1950s and 1960s. Just explain to me what was going on back then.
Well, so we had a big wave of immigration in the 50s and 60s after World War II, which obviously we know about, and we're having another wave of immigration now. In the 50s and 60s, the immigrants mostly came from Europe, from Italy, Greece and the UK. And Australia at the time recognised the trade qualifications of those countries. And so therefore, a lot of the people, if not most of them, I don't know, I haven't seen any data on how many, but a lot of the people who came from Europe in those decades were tradies. They were brickies and concreters and carpenters. And I think people of my vintage and others know anecdotally that that's the case. We know that's true. And so what was going on then is that the immigrants were building their own houses, or at least they were helping to increase the supply of houses at the same time as looking for a place to live. But the government, there's a government body called the Trades Recognition Council or Commission, and they do not recognise the trade qualifications of most Asian countries, India and China in particular. And so the new wave of immigrations at the moment comes from those countries, not so much from Europe and UK. And the trade qualifications are not recognised. So therefore, the new lot of immigrants are not building the houses they need in order to house themselves.
A lot of those rules would be around safety though, right? The quality of building.
Sure, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we just kind of, with the stroke of a pen, recognise trade qualifications of every country or something. I don't think that that's a good idea at all, because there's probably a good reason that we don't. It's simply a fact of the situation we have. And so that has added to the fact that most families these days want their kids to go to university, not to do a trade. Yeah. There's just been a trend. I mean, I'm not saying everyone wants to do this. I mean, a lot of people still do a trade. But what's occurred is that the construction workforce has basically remained static for 20 years at the same time as the demand for housing has increased substantially.
We just don't have enough builders.
We don't have enough builders. There aren't enough people doing apprenticeships. We don't have enough builders. Not enough of the immigrants are, in fact, tradies. So, they are mostly commerce graduates or students and cooks. The biggest category is cooks and chefs.
Yeah. Well, we love to eat, but we are really stuck, aren't we, if we don't get more builders? Because how can we possibly increase supply if we don't have them?
Well, the government body called Build Skills Australia has estimated that we are about 117,000 tradies short of achieving the National Housing Accord target of 1.2 million houses over 5 years. And so, the actual body that studies these things are saying that we don't have enough tradies by 117,000. And there's no real sign that that's going to... I mean, the federal government's doing what it can, but these are all long-term solutions. They'll take 10 years, maybe 20 years to turn it around.
And the thing is also, Alan, universities are driving a lot of our immigration at the moment, aren't they?
Well, of course. I mean, as funding for universities has declined over the past couple of decades, the number of foreign students has increased, and the universities have agents on commission in Asian countries recruiting students for them, and they're paid a commission for each fish they land. So, I mean, in a sense, what's happened is the government has outsourced immigration to the universities in order for them to fund themselves in place of funding from the government. I was just looking at data this morning from the government's website, not the ABS, but there's the data.com website, .com.au, and the number of temporary visa holders in Australia at the moment is a record high. This is at the end of September, of 2.9 million. And it's never been 2.9 million before. And that includes students, working holiday makers, visitors. So, I mean, a lot of them, say there's 357,000 visitors, they're all in hotels, right? But the students all are in apartments. There's 736,000 Kiwis in Australia at the moment, and they're all looking for apartments. Bridging visas, 405,000. I mean, these are big numbers of people. In fact, the biggest numbers there have ever been in Australia at the moment. And a lot of them, not quite all of them, are looking for apartments or in apartments, renting. I mean, they're not buying, I don't think, because they're temporary, but they're renting.
So, I mean, this demand for housing is so huge, and obviously that then feeds into affordability. So what, if anything, can the government do about this at this point?
Yeah, so look, I don't fully understand how come the government does not control immigration. It's a mystery to me, because not only does it not control it, it doesn't even seem to know what's going on. The only attempt to forecast immigration is done by Treasury in its budget each year, and each year it's entirely wrong. I mean, it's sort of... I added up over the last 3 years, since the National Accord was signed in October 2022, the forecasts from Treasury totalled 800,000, an immigration of 800,000 over the following 3 years, which is up until now. And the actual number of immigrants has been 1.4 million. So, I mean, the Treasury was 600,000 out. So,
Yes.
Why is that? I don't understand it. How come nobody knows what's going on?
The public wouldn't stand for it from other professions, I don't think.
Well, look, it's interesting because I've got a target of 1.2 million houses as the National Housing Accord, and everyone signed up to all the state governments, the housing, the property industry bodies, and 9 super funds all signed up to this, and they all kind of seriously said, okay, 240,000 a year. But they're already well behind. It's been 1 year of the 5 years, well behind, and now the task is up from 240,000 per year to 270,000 per year because they're so far behind in the first year. And I don't know, I mean, are they going to make 270,000? And the trouble is that this number that was conceived at the Housing Accord is simply a round number. I mean, it doesn't have any relationship to, as far as I can tell, it doesn't have a relationship to any forecast of demand. Like, they haven't said, we believe that there's going to be X number of people coming into Australia and this is going to be the demand for housing, and therefore we're going to make sure that this number of houses is built. They've just come up with a round number, which sounds politically nice. The initial number was 1 million, which is very, very round number. and then they made it 1.2 the following year. So that's where it is.
Oh my gosh. Well, while Treasury then tries to figure out how to get its forecasts right, Alan, what for the housing market? I mean, is the only way up for housing prices forever and ever? That's the only way they ever go. It's always up.
Well, as I say, look, everyone's working really hard. Claire O'Neill, housing minister, she's working, day and night to turn this around. The housing ministers in Victoria, New South Wales and other states are focused on it. They're trying to do something about it. I just feel like it isn't going to be enough to bring house prices down, because that's not what anyone wants anyway. I mean, most people own a house. They don't want the price to go down. So I think what's occurred over the past 25 years, which is a doubling of the house price to income ratio from 4 to 8 to 9 times, that's, in my view, now locked in. That has changed Australia permanently. It means that a house that should cost $500,000 if the house price to income ratio had not changed now costs $1 million, and so on. I reckon what we need to do is get used to what we've got, this level of house prices now, and we need to get around it.
Sounds like, from what you're saying, the horse has bolted. Excuse the pun.
I think it might have.
Alan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Alan Kohler is the ABC's finance presenter and columnist. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Jessica Wukinov. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Please find the link to our listener survey and tell us what you think. Thanks for listening.